G'day Novocastrians, welcome back to the Jetstream. We keeping up our reputation as the most occasional podcast in the A-League amongst the fan podcasts, and after a couple of weeks off due to people's availabilities, and I apologise, I had to pull the pin on one or two recording sessions. I was crook a couple of weeks ago before the international break and all that sort of bad stuff, but we are back, and unfortunately we had a fairly positive discussion on the last episode, but this one is not going to be so much. I've just got the one fellow contributor to join me today, Matt. Matt, welcome back, mate. How was your couple of weeks off?
Evening, Furns. Yeah, it's been a busy couple of weeks. Likewise for you, with yourself. Sort of lot going on with family and work and whatnot. Still, managed to watch the games. Unfortunately, it's probably a couple of hours that I could have spent doing other things that would have been more productive. But such is the life of a Jet supporter.
Yeah, absolutely. It's unfortunately all of my teams seem to be on a losing streak since we last recorded. The Socceroos lost. Liverpool have been losing games hand over fist, and the Jets, not to be outdone, have basically, kept the three-peat going. So. We'll get into talking about, the Jets at any rate, because I mean, people probably wouldn't mind if we talked a bit of the Socceroos, but not really the focus of this podcast, and I'll be getting angry DMs from people talking about Liverpool. So, we'll get into talking about the Jets, and obviously, Matt, the last time we spoke was the 5-2 win against Victory. You did mention in that game there was a few things that was sort of worrying you that didn't get punished by the Victory, and we were able to, to coin a phrase, chicken shit into chicken salad. But has what you sort of hinted at on our last episode sort of maybe come to fruition a bit in the last couple of games? I think you were sort of highlighting issues in the midfield where things aren't quite what they should be, and it seems to be that area that seems to be losing us games at the moment.
It's always good to hear a Brock Lesnar quote thrown in. So well done, Ferns.
No worries.
It very, very much. I think the pressure is a different level, obviously, in the full-time professional league compared to what it was in the Australia Cup, and those little sort of half chances that we were able to get away with. We weren't punished on. It's at completely another level now, and you get away with 5, playing against maybe semi-pro teams that weren't quite as sharp. But now that everyone's starting to get a bit of fitness and we're realistically sort of in the season, where I think the guys are sort of finding that this is another level, unfortunately, sort of we've been exposed multiple times under really sort of similar circumstances. So it's going to be an interesting road over the next couple of games to sort of see how Millsy can win the squad back, or not necessarily. I don't think he's lost the squad, but maybe they've lost the confidence that they had, obviously, going into the start of the season, and just playing that sort of same sort of carefree and attacking football that we were.
Is it just a simple matter of the teams watched? I mean, obviously they've had a fairly decent back catalogue of games in the Australia Cup run to watch, to be able to counteract what the Jets were so good at doing in that competition. But is it just a simple matter of the same things been going wrong in all of the games, or is it been little issues cropping up that have just caused it? Sorry about the notification popping up there. Has it been the same issues basically, or has it been a couple of problems that have caused us to be losing these games?
I've seen the same or a very similar goal scored against us 4 or 5 times now, which is us sort of turning the ball over, playing out of our back third and sort of losing in our half, or sometimes, even in our back third. And the attacking left winger being able to bomb forward because Aquilina's sort of pushed up quite quickly expecting that, we'd get on the attack. And that might have been the reason that he was sort of left out of the starting lineup for the last game. But it's great to see that we've got such a positive mindset that we'll play our way out of anything, and that like they're looking to make forward passes. But just the mistakes that we're making in key areas are absolutely killing us. Like, I certainly have noticed that other teams are much, more likely, I guess, to just play the ball forward and then try and press us rather than try and play through us. All the games like in the last 3 weeks, if the games were won on possession, we would have won, handsomely across all three. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter if we've got the ball. It matters when we've got the ball in the right areas. And I think the other thing that everyone would have realised was going to happen was that there was a lot more attention on Alex Battleado after that sort of victory game, and he's really effectively had the clamps being put on him over the last couple of weeks with like a lot more close attention and man marking. So that sort of outlet, that creative outlet, hasn't disappeared, but we're certainly not getting the same output from him. Max Burgess has still been like playing quite well, in my opinion. But I think that goes to show that sometimes experience is a greater contributor than maybe necessarily raw talent. Burgess has still been able to find those pockets and find a bit of space and play play positive balls, but just the link between defense and midfield has got me really worried at the moment, like and how we react under the press.
Yeah, and obviously we've been missing Clayton Taylor for a very large period, which is a fairly potent attacking weapon that we've had in the past that hasn't been available to us, and we only really saw him in about 20 minutes, I think, in the Perth game was the first time we've seen him this season. So Millsy hasn't really had a fairly significant weapon in his arsenal to be able to call upon to change games. We're relying on younger players. Obviously, Coda's been missing for the whole season as well with his injury. So and Bayliss is sort of was missing for a large chunk of the preseason. Has popped up a couple of times in the last few matches, but would probably be nowhere near as far along as the players that had a solid run in the cup, who were sort of fairly match fit. But he's another one sort of working his way back into some form of match fitness, which a bunch of his younger compatriots are much further ahead than him, but he's another fairly decent attacking option that has not really been available. That's three fairly major misses from last season that haven't been available this season, and like you said, we've been coming up against in the cup run a lower level of opposition for those younger players. Were tested in patches, but not to the length of time and to the level that they're being tested now. And obviously, we've seen in the past, and I'm pretty sure we had this discussion as part of the season preview, that younger players can be very flaky when it comes to their confidence, and it doesn't take much for them to go back into their shells. I don't really think that's been as bad as what we've seen in the past when we've relied on a fairly large contingent of youth players to pull us through large periods with some players being missing. But it's maybe just players haven't been as prevalent to dip into their bag of tricks. That maybe playing it safe is maybe more of what they've been falling back on rather than trying a couple of different things. Maybe trying that less often has been the issue, and maybe that's why but just like you said, younger players are going to make mistakes, and you've seen we saw a couple of seasons before the Coasties had their run of trophies that they were terrible for quite a number of seasons because they had no money to spend on players, so they were relying entirely on youth. And it took a long time for their youth to finally pull through, but it does happen eventually. But we're just in a bit of are we hopefully in a short period of pain for some long term gain, or do you think that's maybe going to be one of those seasons where we're just looking to try and get these players up to A-League speed now? And we're just going to have to suffer along with the consequences for the short to medium term for, a long-term positive gain.
I think the overall quality of the squad is good. Sorry, Taylor played for 20 odd minutes in the Brisbane game
Oh, we did
as
too.
well, but
Yep.
you probably didn't notice that he was out there because by that stage,
It
we
was, yeah,
weren't even in the match.
absolutely.
Um, um, I think sort of going back to your point on young players, like young players will try something and then they'll try it again as long as they've got confidence. But when the wind is sort of knocked out of their sails, and I think the Sydney game, it certainly hurt us getting ahead and then losing sort of quite convincingly. And let's face it, Toure was on an absolute tear.
Yeah.
That game, everything he touched turned to gold and goals as well. Um,
Nice pun, not
uh,
intended.
yeah, unintentional. Um, so that, but going up against Sydney with our record against them, I think that wasn't necessarily the breaking point. I think the breaking point, for the drink mentality of the squad, was that game against Brisbane,
Yeah.
where going into it, you weren't looking at them as like a top contender, and you weren't necessarily looking at them as an individually or on paper like a high rated team. We I knew that it was going to be a really physical match, and I remember having a chat with someone sort of before the game saying like, this will, if the Jets don't get at least the same number of yellow cards as what Brisbane do, we're going to get absolutely run over. Like,
Yeah.
they're an old school, tackle hard, run hard, play hard kind of team, and sometimes that physical presence can overcome like a more skillful team
Yeah.
just in those moments, and
Putting us
that's what
off
they
our
did to
rhythm.
us. Like,
Put us off our rhythm.
they absolutely, I mean, they've got like a very, very physical team. Don't get me wrong, they've got a couple of really good players, and I still think Jay O'Shea is like one of the best in the league. But their overall approach to games is, we'll foul as much as we need to. We will ace the ball all game. We're going to absolutely take everyone on. And they're not a young team. They're like an experienced team. So whatever happens the week before, they can sort of wipe the slate clean. Whereas younger guys, and like we've got a lot of younger guys, or not necessarily younger, but less experienced guys, are probably going to more dwell on the previous result.
Yeah.
So having the win against Melbourne was great. Having the loss against Sydney was bad, but then backing it up with a loss against a loss against Brisbane, I think that really, really hurt us going into Perth. I was right on the fence as far as who to actually pick, and unfortunately, I did. Unfortunately, I'm probably always going to pick the Jets, in the tipping comp anyway. But I was right on the fence as far as who to put down there, because I could just sort of see the writing on the wall and a few cracks sort of starting to appear, and it would have been, yeah, it would have really needed something from Millsy to get that squad just to gel and start to believe in themselves again, because we're a much better team than Brisbane, and we're a much better team than Perth. It's going to come down to the belief that I think that we're going into each game with, and having an inexperienced team is just going to make that so much more difficult when you're coming off the back of a defeat. As far as like Coda, when Coda was injured, and we were sort of waxing lyrical 3 weeks ago about how deep our attacking stocks were, and whether Clayton Taylor, I remember saying it on the pod, whether Clayton Taylor could even walk back into the starting lineup when you had Battleado and Bertoncello and whatnot playing so well.
Yeah.
And Ben Gibson and Lockie Rose are neck and neck, I think, still, as far as who the starting striker is. They both offer something slightly different. Ben's probably a bit more technical and really good at turning with the ball and holding up play, and Lockie's just an absolute pest. And sometimes you need that. He's like a physical pest, because we probably don't have that physical presence in the middle of midfield. Maybe you need Lockie on there, and Clayton will certainly add something to the squad when he gets back up to full fitness, as far as, like I said, his mentality and his ability to reset after one game and go into the next one, because he's been in the league now for a couple of seasons and he's been through losses. But it's certainly going to be a challenge now for Millsy just to rally the troops and get us to go into next week, with that belief that we can actually outscore the opposition.
Well, we've sort of briefly touched on those two previous games before the international break, and we'll leave those where they are, because we've spent about as much time on them as at this point as I would like to. I don't really want to go back and revisit them, but with the 2 weeks we had, or the week off that we had with the international break, we were hoping obviously that Millsy was going to be able to get a solid run at working out what was going wrong and work on some strengths with the players on the park, on the training pitch. Obviously, there was a couple of changes to the starting lineup. Shaughnessy got bombed out completely. Aquilina got dropped to the bench, and I think Bayliss from the previous game was also dropped to the bench, as well as Gibson. So obviously Rose, Bertolicio, and Max Cooper were on from the start, and Dobson had done well enough, I think, in the previous games to continue starting on that sort of left-hand attacking midfield role. Was there enough change were the changes warranted, and was there enough? I don't know whether any of those issues were forced due to minor knocks, or whether they were purely tactical / form. But were those changes that should have been positive?
Well, I think they were almost forced after 2 losses, and a mix of inexperienced players and players that maybe were a little bit slightly down in form. The latter probably being Aquilina. Defensively, he'd been caught out. Obviously against Sydney a couple of times. And it just seems to be that when we turn the ball over, there seems to be space on that side for the opposition to break. So, like maybe it was just Millsy sort of trying to rein in that attacking instinct that he's got.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, like I think Aquilina is still probably one of the better players in the squad. Like, I mean, he was captain a couple of weeks ago, so he's obviously still got a lot of respect there. But and at the start of the season, I guess if someone had to ask, who's more likely to lose their starting spot, is it Wilmering or Aquilina? I would have said Wilmering, but Wilmering's been pretty solid.
Yep.
Like, to be honest with you, maybe missing a little bit of the quality in the final third, but defensively he's been pretty good all season, like in a team that struggled defensively. The other sort of players, I think, they probably fall into the less experienced category, and bringing in other young players to replace the young players, probably just wiping away some of that stigma from the last couple of losses, and replacing it with enthusiasm and people that are looking to make an impact. So they were probably all, you look at just the names and go, oh, like, is that guy better than that guy, or does that guy add more than that guy? It's really hard to say, but you've got to, I guess, get an idea on the morale of the individual players, which we're not going to do just looking at the games. It's going to come from the day in, day out of training, and who's training harder and who seems to want it more. So that was probably why the decisions were made.
Do you think it was maybe winding it back a little to a bit more of a cup, almost a cup starting 11? That there was obviously a lot of players in there that were there, with the exception of obviously Aquilina not being there and Rose being there. most of the players on the pitch were players that were performing so well during the cup run? Do you think he was maybe winding back the clock and going back to what initially was working a couple of months ago?
Yeah, possibly, because I mean, these guys that were coming into the team, their last couple of starts, we'd probably come off the back of a couple of wins, so their morale would have been like a lot higher. Whereas, you after you get kicked a couple of times and you're bouncing from loss to loss, and
Yeah.
poor performance to poor performance, it's hard to get back up again. So, yeah, it was probably just that's fresh injection of enthusiasm, like I mentioned, that Millsy was sort of hoping to capitalize. Yeah, and I mean, like, for the first half hour or so of the game, then it really seemed to be working. Like, we were playing like a much better team than Perth.
Yeah.
Like a bad decision and dubious call, and the game goes against us. But we with the around half time, you could, or at least for the second half of the match, you could see that I don't think that we were quite up for it. Like, I think that the wind had sort of gone out of our sails a little bit when Perth got there first, and just the belief wasn't quite there, like that we had in the cup, that we could actually come back and score again. Because the number of times I think that we went behind, or the opposition drew level and then we'd go ahead again during the cup was great. But just over the last 3 weeks, we've gone ahead twice and then still ended up losing the game.
Yeah.
So, and on the Will Dobson thing, like I thought he was probably one of the best on the pitch for the first um, first half the game. He's certainly starting to cement himself as, like a nailed on starter, and like the experience of, maybe a rough year last year where he was sort of in and out of the squad a little bit, has probably done him wonders.
I thought Bertolicio stood in for Aquilina pretty well, bit maybe more defensively solid, and I thought was getting backwards and forwards, pushing up to support Bertoncello, which obviously come up dividends for the first goal. But I thought maybe until we scored the first goal, I thought it was fairly even. Maybe we just sort of shaded it with maybe less silly turnovers than Perth. Perth were turning the ball over every couple of minutes and giving us possession back, which was very nice of them. And it also led to our first goal, which was obviously some nice work from Dobson getting the ball to Battleado, who then passed the ball through to Bertoncello, who scored his first goal. They did mention on the broadcast that it was the first Novocastrian to score their debut goal since Nick Cowburn back in 2018. So it's been a long time since we've had a local player score their debut goal at home. So that was good. But yeah, I thought Bertolicio did well. Bertoncello was doing well in patches and certainly looked good for his goal. And then we sort of dominated between the first, like you said, the first and second goal when they scored their first. That sort of maybe was a bit of a gut punch that caused the doubt to start creeping back in.
Yeah, like that goal certainly gave us confidence, and I remember at least sort of 3 or 4 shots that we had on target, or 3 or 4 really good opportunities. I think Lockie Rose had one, I think, where he was almost 1-on-1. There was, like I said, two or three others. Sorry, it escapes me, and I didn't do my research and
that's
rewatch
right.
the game before we recorded. I couldn't bring myself to do it.
Caltech was everywhere
But
as usual.
oh yeah, like, that's right. I remember sort of saying on the day in the chat that, why didn't we sign him if we needed an experienced defender, like at least just to take him off the rest of the league, because the
Yeah.
guy seems to have an absolute blinder, every time he plays against us. But that against the run of play, and again it was like a turnover. I think it was this time might have been Cooper sort of
Yeah, it
playing out of
was.
defence, and it
Yep.
was like a ball, a errant pass right up near halfway, and we just got exposed. It was like 3-on-2 at the back, because once again both fullbacks had sort of pushed up expecting us to go on the attack, and it's probably the 4th or 5th time that like that we've had a goal like that scored against us so far this season, and they've been turning points. And you've almost got to think like did heads drop then because people were like, oh shit, not this again. Like we've just turned the ball over and they've scored. They've played it out to the left and they've scored. Like, it's Groundhog Day. What do you do to fix it? Like, do I don't think we abandon the whole ethos of playing the ball out,
No.
but something's got to be done, I guess, to protect us that little bit more against these, really costly turnovers. I think, that, and it's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it? Because we play out slowly, we give the opposition a chance to reset, and then we don't look as dangerous because we're not on the counter. But some of our best goals that we've scored have just been when we've retained possession and recycled it and sort of played with the ball, like in that opposition sort of attacking 35 or 40. And that's sort of, I think, where when we can get our technicians on the ball more in that sort of part of the field, and they're not worried about a quick turnover and then all of a sudden it going down the other end. Maybe that's more of our style of football, like a slightly slower build up. But it really sort of exposed the fact that we're weak when other teams press us.
Yeah. And you've seen that in the games, that we've lost heavily. Mariners did it in the first game because they were up for it. It was a derby. They had all the bad press during the week leading into the A-League. They were in our face every single time we lost the game. Victory are a counter-attacking team. They let us have the ball to their detriment, and then they they got punished for it.
We won. One with the same. But they still scored one goal doing exactly that.
Yeah, exactly right.
The turnover.
And then Sydney obviously play in your face. Sydney play in your face because they're one of the top teams in the league, and that's what they're going to do. Brisbane, you said they're a physical, aggressive team. They're in your face the whole time. They're trying to out press your press, and they're being very physical about it. And Perth had nothing to lose, and obviously Adam Griffiths sitting on the bench there, ex-Newey boy from way back, obviously knows what he's doing and was able to get their players to be able to. I don't think they did it as much as the other teams, and that's why maybe we didn't lose by as much as we did. They were very good at turning over possession themselves, and I think that game probably should have ended in a draw. We'll talk about the bullshit penalty in a minute, but you could definitely see the difference between the Mariners, Sydney and Brisbane versus Victory and Perth. Perth weren't as in your face as all those other teams, but were a little bit and were able to benefit from, a lucky. They were able to capitalise on a poor turnover. I did want to point out before we move on that Grozos and Burgess both went straight over to Cooper after that goal was conceded. The first goal was conceded, to pat him on the back, G him up, tell him not to let it get to him and to shake it off and to get his head back in the game, which was very heartening to see. And I had another point to make and now I've lost it because I wanted to make sure I highlighted that Grozos and Burgess. So, yeah. But yeah, and the other thing was that they were able to. I think it worked. We were unlucky, I think, in this Perth game to a point, but we also didn't show enough to be able. I don't think we would have won the game. I think we probably should have. I think we'd done enough to come away with a point, but we were very unlucky to concede that penalty, which we'll talk about in a second, and end up losing the game. And then our confidence after that was shot to pieces. We nearly lost by 3, but there was obviously the offside call for Tags when he was through to put the ball through for whoever their other player was. I think it might have been Kaczarski. He might have ended up scoring that, but yeah, I look, it's going to take some time, I think, to turn this form around. There is some green shoots. I'm trusting that Millsy will be able to get us out of this, and I think some of the players coming back are going to help. I I think Coda's probably going to help, but as well. But yeah, Taylor was pretty anonymous when he came on, I thought.
Yep.
Bayless was a little better. Gibson was not getting any service, much like Rose, so there was not much they could do. But yeah, the I did have a point in there somewhere, but I think it's wafted off into the ether. So I'll hand over the I'll hand over the continuation to you.
Well, all I'll say about it is that if the fixtures were swapped and we played Perth 3 weeks ago and played Sydney last week, I think the last 3 weeks would have been completely different. Off the back of that victory win, we would have absolutely trounced Perth. As far as quality of the squad, and you're right, like it was 50-50, but we didn't have the same belief that we had sort of pre-season, or even like a couple of weeks ago, the same momentum, and that had a big impact, I guess, on the output of the players. I thought the Tom Lawrence yellow card to Sushnia and then getting dragged for Taggart was, I don't know whether that necessarily helped us at all, or maybe majority of the squad that we've got playing now is probably too young to remember Taggart when he was an absolute gun. But
Yeah.
I think the crowd still remembers that he's like,
The crowd still love him. Crowd still love him. And I actually thought the Sujna, whoever he was scrapping with in Tom Lawrence in that set piece thing before he got dragged, I thought that was actually quite funny, and was actually pleased to see that Sujna was standing up to him, because.
And it was 100% deserved too. Like
Yeah.
he was being an absolute pest,
Yeah.
trying to get under. But I guess like maybe that's something that other teams have realised as well, is that you get under his skin, and then all of a sudden maybe the composure and the leadership goes out the window when he sees red. So,
Yeah.
like it's all these little things that add up. If
Yep.
there's a way to piss off Alex, and then all of a sudden the back four lose its shape, then we're back in the game, and it seemed to happen. And I think that the Taggart substitution probably had as much of an effect on the crowd as what it did the players. Like I said, like most of these guys probably don't remember or don't care about how Taggart was. Like when he came on, I'm like, oh shit, here we go. This is going to be tough, for us to hang on. Like Adam Taggart playing in Newcastle, he's probably going to score, or at least do something, like game changing. And
Yeah.
while he didn't get the goal, I think he drew a lot of attention. So, but like I said, in saying that, if we had played them off the back of a big win, when the in the infancy of the season, I think we would have rolled them. Like I think that we would have gotten over that, got the unfortunate misplaced pass. We would have just continued to play our game, and we would have absolutely rolled them. And then going into Brisbane, it would have been different sort of squad morale. They probably would have been more up for the fight, rather than on the back of a shellacking. And once again, that would have been more of an arm wrestle, but we would have been more up for it. So unfortunately though, the next sort of run of fixtures that we've got over the next couple of weeks aren't looking real kind for us. So
No.
yeah, it's we're on the bottom of the table now, and it's going to be tough to get off it.
Would that game have changed much if we'd have had Timmins on our side rather than on the opposition?
Well, not when he was playing for us.
Not the Grozos-Timmins combination. Well, I mean that's the weird thing, because he was getting better before he left. I'm pretty sure we both said that. Look, he was a punching bag and pretty rubbish, and I did laugh when it was consistent fouling that got him yellow carded about 30 minutes in. I was like, oh, that brings back memories. And watching him pass to people not wearing the same colour shirt as him was also bringing back memories. But that was sort of something early Timmins, not Timmins just before he left. I actually thought it had taken a long time, but the partnership in the middle of the park with him and Grozos was actually starting to bear fruit, and then we let him go. Are we maybe missing somebody, or maybe we need to switch someone in the midfield's role around a little bit to be hanging around Grozos? Or because we are trying to squeeze Burgess, Battleado, Dobson, Bertoncello, Nunez, Coda when he comes back, Taylor, Bayless, all into these four positions because you're
We're
assuming
missing
that.
a dog.
Yeah,
We're
we're
missing a dog
assuming
in
Grozos
midfield.
is going to be at the base of the midfield, but are we missing that, or can one of our players that are there be repurposed? Do we need somebody like a Stevie UG to an Angus Thurgate, or do we need to evolve past that and maybe get the same performances out of a number of players in the middle of the park rather than just relying on one player to do that for Costa? Or am I barking up the wrong tree?
Oh no, I 100% agree. Like that, we are missing just that midfield dog that the opposition, when they see them coming in for a tackle, they go, "Oh, this is 50-50. Maybe I'll just go in at 30 and let him win the ball." So like I don't get absolutely crunched. Yeah, like we don't have that at the moment. The only two players in the squad that I see with that sort of attribute week in, week out are unfortunately probably Sushnir and Rose, and neither of them are really going to be
No.
effective sort of playing in like a holding disruptive midfield role.
What about
I don't know,
Bracco?
like
Bracco
well that
was in the middle of the
that
park.
was the only other one that I was going to mention, and I think this sort of sample size might be a little bit too small to
Very, very
sort of
small.
throw him in there. But yeah, look, I mean, he certainly seems up for it defensively. He seems quite good. Um, it's just it would be a lot of pressure to put on him to throw him in the middle of the park where he's going to have to be a lot more involved. As a young guy, but we did it with Angus. To an extent, I guess. Like we built Stevie Stevie U's career. Like I know that we weren't his first team, but he certainly expanded on the reputation. Although he did come back from overseas, so he probably got a fair bit of experience even in training over there.
Hmm.
But yeah, we definitely need someone that is just up for the fight in the middle of the pitch because
And has good engines.
that has a good engine, has got a good touch, doesn't necessarily have to play the ball forward, but just has to win those one-on-one challenges, and has got to create that little bit of aura around him where players go, "Oh, this is 50-50. No, I'll ease off a little bit here. They can get the ball." Because I know I know I'll be on the receiving end of if I do go in for it.
Well,
And unfortunately, 9 out of the 11 players that play for Brisbane are all like that. I
yeah.
think they're not the most skillful, but it's like 50-50. Geez, I'm going to get crunched.
So should we be
Look,
should we be getting that out of Grozos though, or should we be getting it out of someone next to Grozos? Are we? Grozos isn't that sort of player, and never will be. So do we need to have
I think
someone next to him to make up for what he doesn't do, or do we need to be looking to replace Grozos, or looking to train someone up to eventually replace Grozos to do the stuff that he doesn't want to do? Because I mean, again,
well,
who are you going to drop out of that midfield? I mean, probably Bertoncello, and then you're going for a 4-2-3-1 where you've got Burgess, Battleado, and Dobson behind Rose or Gibson. But yeah, you're sort of you're going to be defensively solid, but you're then going to be asking one or two of those anchoring midfielders to be. They're going to need to have big engines in them because they're going to be needing to push themselves forward when we're in attack, and then dropping back. There's going to be a lot of shuttle running in that position. Or should we be getting that
and,
sort of performance from Costa?
we definitely need Stevie G, Lampard, Makalele, like type player. But that's why they're absolute diamonds in the
Yeah.
rough. And,
So you're looking at
trying
an
to
8. We're needing an 8 as well as a 6, not just a better 6.
I think so. I think Grozos is never going to score double figures in a season or even go close.
Yeah.
He's they're molding him to be the fulcrum in the team, and he's definitely getting a lot better. And from probably a communication perspective, he's getting a lot better. But he still struggles at times just to really sort of any dominance,
Stamp his
like
authority.
or stamp his authority, on the game, especially when it's not going our way. When we've got momentum, he's great. When he gets that little bit of time on the ball, he's great. But just when we don't have that time on the ball, there's certainly turnovers and whatnot. And because he doesn't have that aggression in his game, he's not the sort of kind of player that's going to go and make that big tackle and break up the play, or very rarely he will. Looking at the squad that we've got, like you're like, we've got a lot of really technical players. We just don't have that dog, that absolute workhorse dog that will get up and back. Like Aquilina is maybe someone that you can put into that category. He's, I'm not going to say lost his way, but I think he's really bought into this whole counter attacking, get forward sort of mentality, and maybe the defensive sort of side he's been sort of left wanting a few times. But he's maybe someone that can play in slightly more centrally, because let's face it, like we've seen it plenty of times, he's very, very good in the one-on-one, and he doesn't sort of shy away from a challenge. So technically he's pretty good too. So
Yeah.
maybe that's someone that they can move in, he's a slightly sort of more experienced head. It's going to be sort of an interesting couple of months, because I don't think that we're going to bring a new or many new players in come January, barring sort of departures. But whether they can repurpose someone that we've already got in the squad, or whether we just need to look at a change in formation. I would still love to see Gibson and Rose start, because I think that, like I said, they're neck and neck for the starting position, but they both offer something different. Like Rose being that terrier and looking to get behind the line at every opportunity, and Gibson sort of being quite tidy on the ball. And when he gets good service, Gibson's been pretty good for us, and he's very, very good at sort of receiving the ball with man marker and being able to turn them and get a shot away. So maybe those two in playing in conjunction might, I guess, give us extra options when we do win the ball, that we're not constantly having to try and play through defenses. And having Rose and Gibson both on might improve our press a little bit. It's tough. It's a really tough question, Furns, but I just don't think that we've got the right player in the squad right now to just be playing a single holding midfielder. Let's put it that way. We don't have someone with the attributes that can be a ball player and be and disrupt the opposition. And I don't think there's many of those in the league.
No. We were spoilt in our past with having Stevie UG and Angus in the midfield, and it'd be nice to have that again with somebody. But it looks like maybe Millsy's going to have a look in the youth setup and see if there's anyone that can fit that role and be brought in to start doing that. But again, you put someone else in that position who you're taking out, and I know what you mean by I'd actually like to see Aquilina deployed further forward. I thought Bertolicio and or Bertoncello would probably do well in a right back role. They would be able to shuttle backwards and forwards and sort of do that defensive work. And having Aquilina further forward to up in sort of maybe more of a 4-1 2-3 sort of system, where you've got Dobson, Rose, and Aquilina sort of as a forward line. Then you've got Burgess, Battlelardo behind with Grozos. Would be, but then where are you putting your terrier? That's another question for another. I mean, this is just that was just a thought for right now, rather than down the line. We don't know, like we said, we've only got a very small sample size of what Bracco can do, and he's a very young player who's only just been promoted into the first team squad. So it's very early days for him to see what he's going to be able to do, and he looks good initially, but when does he was dropped out of the matchday squad against Perth along with Shaughnessy. So Millsy's certainly cycling through some of the players. So it's going to be this where the coach earns his money. It's going to be up to him to be able to mold with what he's got. And I don't know whether we've got any money to do anything in January, but it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens, especially with one or two players that are out with injuries. I think Lachlan. Obviously, Oscar Fry's out for the season again, so we can bring in some sort of injury replacement for him, possibly. I'm not sure. Noah James and Coda, I think, are both back in training, but they're obviously going to be working their way to, full training loads. They're still not all the way there yet, so who knows when we're going to see them. And you've also got Taylor Bayliss and a couple of other players that are still working their way back up to full match fitness. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting season. There's never a dull moment in Newcastle.
Oh, amen to that. And it does seem to be a bit of a square pegs for round holes sort of scenario that we've got at the moment, because it really looks like Broslis is going to be the holding midfield. We just really need someone to I guess complement his attributes, and the players that we've tried so far, like Bayliss, Burgess has sort of played deeper a few games as well. They're very similar to what Grossos sort of brings to the table. We just we need that out and out aura player. We need the next Joe Wheelhouse or Gus or a fit Kanorowski or someone of that ilk, that you're not expecting anything technical necessarily from them, but you know what you're getting. You're getting a stopper in the middle of the park, so that if we do turn the ball over, it's not going any further. Like tackle or foul, the play will be stopped when they run into him.
Right. Well, that pretty much covers the games that we've had. The game coming up is an away trip over across the ditch to Auckland, Sunday the 30th of November, 1 p.m. kickoff, obviously with the time difference. Caesar Jets travelling to take on high-flying Auckland. Going back to look at the... Going back to look at the ladder, sees Sydney at the moment, after 5 rounds played. Sydney FC on top, 12 points, Auckland 11. Adelaide United third with 9, Melbourne 8, Melbourne City 8, Brisbane Roar 8 in 5th. Goals against, I think, is what separates those two. Central Coast in the bottom of the top 6 with 7 points, just ahead of Macarthur, Wellington and Wanderers 8th and 9th, Victory, Glory, and the Jets propping up the table at the moment. Last place second, travelling across the ditch, Auckland. I think I saw a stat today that only 2 A-League sides have actually beaten them so far in their history. So we've got that running against us. Plus, I don't think we traditionally travel well going across the ditch too. I mean, just going off all of the away trips I've done to Wellington, most of the time they always end up being a loss. How are you seeing this game? Do we think Mills is going to be ringing the changes again, or does he take enough heart from that first sort of half an hour or so that maybe he's just needs to give them time?
I think it's really 100% just going to come down to who trains the best. Unfortunately, he's probably a little bit hamstrung with the personnel that we've got to make wholesale, changes in formation and tactics. I think it's really just going to come down to attitude. So that's not something that, like I said earlier, that we can judge, just watching, 90 minutes every week. It's going to come down to who he feels wants it more and who he probably feels is carrying less of a hangover over the last couple of weeks. Because let's face it, going to Auckland, playing Auckland, they're they're playing pretty well. They're undefeated so far this season. Yeah, it's not going to be an easy game by any stretch. So it'll be, a very, very long bow to draw to expect that we're going to walk away with anything from next week.
What do you think the starting lineup's going to be?
I think that Rose will start because we need that sort of energy. Sorry, I haven't got the last starting lineup in front of me, but yeah, probably
So the last starting lineup was Delianov, Bertolicio,
Delianov.
Cooper.
We're not going to change because we just don't have sort of any other option at the moment.
Cooper and Shuzhna.
I think that they will both stay on. Like as much as Cooper, probably had his worst game of the season. Last game, he's in my opinion, he's probably been more reliable than Shaughnessy. The only reason you'd bring Shaughnessy in, I think, over Cooper would just be if like I said, that Millsy sort of feels that Cooper's still got sort of something hanging over his head. Hanging over his head, from last week. Yeah, I think Wilmering will keep his spot, and I'm pretty sure Aquilina will come back into the starting lineup as well.
So you'd put Aquilina back into right back rather than further forward?
Yeah, I think so. Just from a experience point of view, you don't want to go over there and get done 5-0.
No.
And even if he's got to have a quiet word with Aquilina and just say, look, we're playing away. You can't get forward unless there's an absolute opportunity. Sort of stay back, maintain your shape. I still think he's one of the better players in the squad, so I think you've got to use him. And from an experience perspective, he's probably going to be quicker to get over a loss than potentially Bertolicio would be.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to drop either of the two that were on the right hand side in the game against Perth, so Bertoncello as well. But I would like to see Aquilina further forward. And I thought Bertolicio did fairly well defensively. I don't think we really got penetrated too much down that side, although they did try. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe that would be a strong right-hand sided combination for us if, not any fault of his own, but Bertoncello drop back to the bench and bring him on in the second half to replace one of the two, and maybe start Bertolicio at right back and Aquilina on the right wing. Obviously, Krozos, unless he's injured, will be in the middle of the park. But yeah, your middle four were Dobson, Battolato, Burgess, and Bertoncello, and Rose up front. So any of those changes you would make, I would keep the rest of them as is. But I would be making that swap for Aquilina. But that's probably fanciful. I don't think Millsy's going to do that. But that's just to be a devil's advocate. I'll suggest that.
Oh, look, I think Dobson played well. I think Burgess has to stay because of his experience. I think Rose has to stay because we're going to need him this game. Battolato, Bertoncello, like Bertoncello, pre-season was everywhere. He sort of had a quiet sort of couple of first sort of 5 rounds. I know he got the goal, and then got substituted. So hopefully that wasn't injury. It was more sort of fatigue. And Battolato might be the one out of those 4 that you might consider giving like a break, or just holding him out of the starting lineup just to rebuild some of that enthusiasm, because he's been kicked, he's been really, really closely marked since he sort of burst onto the scene in the first couple of games. So he might be the one that maybe I would look at, depending on the fitness of Clayton Taylor. Like if you think Taylor can get through a solid sort of 45, 50 minutes, and I think he played 35 last week and 20 the week before. So he's going in the right direction to maybe at least get, 45, 50 minutes out of him. So that might be the change that I would look at, is, maybe, keeping Battolato on the bench and maybe bringing Taylor in, just for, once again, a little bit more experience, and given the opposition sort of something slightly different to look at. And you've got to expect that, Taylor, after having sort of such a long time, away from the pitch, is and, with all the rumours, etc., that were surrounding his, departure and all the rest of it, he's got to want to get back on there and sort of rebuild his stock a little bit, and get, I guess, our fans and opposition fans sort of putting a bit of faith back in that name, because once again, he's one of the best or most talented players in the in the squad. Based on when he's really on form, we haven't seen him on form in the last couple of weeks, but he's obviously been coming on when in tough positions, maybe when the game's already sort of started to get away from us, and maybe he needs to just come on right from the start when it's a more level playing field, and give him that little bit more opportunity to sort of build himself into it. So maybe that's the only change that I'd look at out of that sort of mid-4 sort of attacking midfield sort of positions.
Right, and it also gives us a couple of options to switch a few things around on the bench as well. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what goes on with Braco Shaughnessy, and I thought Nunes looked bright when he came on without being given much to do. Looked busy, and
Yes.
but yeah, does Millsy keep using him as a sub, or does he put him on for a game or two and then take him out of the firing line for a couple of weeks and give someone else a go? Like, it will, obviously time will tell. Righto, what do you think the result's going to be?
Oh, my heart is always going to say, the Jets can win. But I think it's going to be a real, uphill battle for that to happen. So if I had to put money on it, I would probably say that Auckland will walk away with a win in this one.
Well, yeah, head says that, heart says draw. I'll go with the draw. At least we'll try and get some sort of positivity, and maybe that might spark a bit of a confidence boost with the players.
Maybe me saying that will be the boost that they need, the motivation they need to go out and actually kick some people and win those 50-50. So come on, prove me wrong.
Absolutely. Righto. Rest of round 6. We'll quickly put our tips in for that. Friday night gets us going with Melbourne Victory travelling up to Brisbane. Yeah, I'm going to pick Brisbane in this one, because Melbourne Victory don't do well when their other teams get physical, and Victory are really teetering, I think, going off. Let me go back to that ladder and see where they're situated. I'm pretty sure they're fairway. Yeah, they're only a point above us on the table. So, yeah, they're. I think Arthur Dillis is circling the drain, as it were. So the knives are going to be out for him, I think, if the bad run continues. So I'm going to pick Brisbane in this one.
Yeah, I'm also going Brisbane, like at home. I thought, Brisbane were unlucky to, unlucky. Was it last week that they played Wellington? No, they didn't play Wellington last week. Who did they play last week? Oh no, they had the draw with Auckland. That's right.
Yep.
So going away. Hearing myself. It's cleared up now. Going away and taking a point from Auckland, really good result. Like, that's almost as good as a win as far as the confidence goes. And they had a really good showing against us at home. So yeah, I'll back Brisbane for that one.
Righto. The 3 games on Sunday, as soon as I get back from where I was flicking backwards and forwards between the matches. So the first game, 3 p.m. kickoff, Wellington hosting Adelaide United. I'm going to pick Wellington in this one, 2-1.
I'm going to have to go Adelaide, like, on the back of what was like a pretty dominant win against City, who, going into that weekend, I think most people pick City. Adelaide to score a couple, even when I think they were up 2-0 from memory, then got a red. City scored, and then they ended up scoring 2 more, sort of something like that. So there's a lot of belief and confidence in that team at the moment, especially when most people had written them off before the season even started. So yeah, I think Adelaide will come away with a win there.
And Wellington lost last week as well, 1-0 against Macarthur. So yeah, you might be right. I'll change my tip and go a draw.
Look at my results in the tipping comp, mate, and I'm probably the last person that you want to be influencing your decisions.
5 p.m. sees the Coasties hosting Melbourne City. Don't care. Melbourne City possibly. Yeah, Melbourne City win.
I'll also back City. I think that there will be a few rockets and a few changes after the last game against Adelaide, and just purely from a quality perspective, I think that City are a much better team than what Central Coast are. So Central Coast have surprised, but yeah, I think City will come away with that.
And 7:35 p.m. sees the Sydney Derby from Combank Stadium. Yeah, Sydney are just looking too strong for me this season. I'm probably just gonna, unfortunately, have to pick them most weeks, especially after the result last week.
Yeah, like it's the battle of who you want to lose more, but no, I think on form you'd have to go Sydney.
And the game after ours on Sunday is 6 p.m. from Campbelltown, Macarthur hosting Perth. I am tipping Perth to get back to their losing ways. I'm picking Macarthur to win this one.
Yeah, I'm with you on that as well. I think that it was that Perth played a very underperforming Jets, and they didn't exactly inspire me with confidence. They didn't play us off the park. I think they were lucky to come away with a win. Like you said earlier, probably a draw would have been a fair result, and we weren't playing particularly well. So yeah, Macarthur.
Righto. And just before we sign off, it would be remiss of us not to mention the Jets women who are performing really well so far this season. Sitting in second, as bad as the men are going, the women are certainly keeping that side of the club on the up and up. And the games played are all over the place on this table too. I'm pretty sure the games that were supposed to take place this week are getting postponed for some reason or another. Maybe an international break or something. Is that what I'm hearing?
I wasn't aware, to be honest with you. I know that we're sort of sitting in second.
There's one game that was supposed to be played, which has been postponed till December 17th. Melbourne City versus Adelaide. That's So it's just the one game. But the women are performing phenomenally well, and their next game is not until December, according to what I'm reading here, December 13th against Brisbane at number 2.
Considering they're sitting in second, and they've only played 3 games, whereas like half the competition's already played 4. Unbeaten. The draw. Were they leading against Wellington for the draw? I can't remember. I do sort of remember watching the highlights. After the match a couple of weeks ago, but yeah, at least part of the club's got something to crow about.
Yeah, unfortunately, not all of us do. So, I'm just trying to skip back to that previous game. So the last game was, Saturday, 1-0 win over Wanderers. So the game you were talking about, which was the 1-1 draw, that was the previous week at away to Wellington. And I believe we just going into that. Yes, no, they went ahead first, and then Melez popped up with a goal in the 23rd minute.
there you go. You've corrected me once again.
No.
Appreciate the fact
Oh,
checking.
that's all right. That was good. That was Googling in real time. So, well, not Googling, but cycling my way through the A-League's website, which magically
It was
was
a
working.
cracker of a free kick though that we scored.
Yep, absolutely. So yeah, that's probably as much as we're going to be able to say on the women's side of things, because as busy as we both are, we unfortunately neither of us get a chance to watch any of the women's games. That's pretty much all. Yeah, go.
Give it another couple of weeks, mate, and I might have to change my priorities. Like if the men's team keep playing the way they are and the women's do, then and I've only got 90 minutes of football that I can commit myself to, I might have to
switch.
Start circling a different game each week to sit down and watch on Paramount.
Yeah, absolutely. The only other bit of news that's come out in the last couple of weeks, there's obviously some news bubbling in the way in the background about the stoush between the Jets, or Maverick Sports Partners, and the stadium about some sort of bond, some sort of security bond being required to be paid in advance for hosting matches at the stadium. So not sure what's happening with that. That seems to have gone quiet, but keep an eye out on the Newcastle Herald for any news coming along with that. But the other piece of information, or the other piece of news that came out today as we record this, was the release of the third kit, which actually looks quite nice.
Yeah, like the shot of them all in the water was an interesting, take on it. Like, they look more like a water polo team than a football team.
It was very early NSL season launch vibes, wasn't
it? Absolutely. I would have preferred to see them banging goals in wearing the shirts rather than like a, Lockie Rose wet t-shirt competition. But it wasn't a bad looking kit. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it looks quite nice.
And based on the last couple of weeks, they had to try and find some good news to, some positive news to give us.
Yep, absolutely. So it is open for pre-orders. You just do I'm pretty sure it's Newcastle Jets /shop or something. You'll be able to Google search and find the New Balance Jets website rather than the old Legends sportswear Jets site, because that website doesn't have any product left on it. They've taken all the product down, despite the absolute plethora of stock old mate from Legends still had from the last time I looked. But I don't know how he's getting rid of it all. But we've moved on, and we've got New Balance, and the kits actually look pretty good for the most part. So it'll be interesting to see any of the other gear merchandise being released. There's apparently a 4-day Black Friday sale going on with merchandise and memberships and all that sort of thing. So keep an eye out on your socials for any of that sort of stuff if you're keen to buy some Jets merchandise at a discount while it's on Black Friday sales. Definitely keep an eye out for that. Usually myself, I wait till the end of the season when they go on sale for half price, but I was hoping to do that with the Australia Cup jersey, but that was a pre-order only opportunity, and doesn't look like they're making any more of those, and I doubt we're going to be getting a RAF jersey this year, so maybe that blue one might be the investment this year. That and the home jersey, the white one still looks a little bit Reebok for me, but doing a much better job with the merchandise with this season with the New Balance partnership. So yeah, all good with that. Was there any other news we need to talk about, mate? Or that's just over an hour and probably more than we wanted to talk about this current run of results. But anything else we need to go over before we sign off?
Nothing. I think that we could sort of talk about on air that's not pure speculation and sort of Chinese whispers or Japanese whispers.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that, mate, all things considered, Furns, you've done really well to keep this on track, and give us something to look forward to next week.
We have done well just for the two of us, and obviously I talking a lot more than I ordinarily would, rather than chiming in with a question here and there and then muting my microphone so you guys can talk and give your opinions rather than needing mine. But I think we've done pretty well, especially with the missing the last couple of weeks. It takes a little while for us to get back in a rhythm, but hey, you don't subscribe to this podcast for our professionalism.
Mate, it's taken the team a couple of weeks to get into rhythm, so I'm sure they can forgive us.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, obviously with Christmas and holidays and everything else coming up in the next month or so, things may be still a little bit occasional. We will get on and record when we can. We are not going anywhere, but obviously our recording schedules are all based around everybody's availability. So if people are sick or they're busy with work or they've got family commitments and all that other stuff, the podcast takes...
Or there's a storm.
Shout out to Andy. Yeah, shout out to Andy. He was going to be on tonight, but unfortunately the storm that rolled through earlier on this evening has taken him out of contention for availability. So absolutely not a problem. It is what it is. And like I said, we've all had, even myself, I've had commitments over the last couple of weeks that meant I've not been able to do the recording either. So yeah, we record when we're able, and we thank everybody for their patience with regards to that. So mate, thank you very much for jumping on, and hopefully either next week or the week after we will get on and talk again.
Come on, the Jets.
So get along to newcastlefootball.net for all the archives for audio, video, news articles, the forums. That's probably something I'm going to have to be looking at fixing over the holidays. I've got a couple of weeks off coming up, so hopefully if I can wrangle some money out of the missus to pay for it, we're getting some new forum software installed to try and fix the issues we've been having with it. But yeah, get along to newcastlefootball.net /podcast for all the subscription links for this, and get along to all of the socials, Jetstream Newey on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and YouTube. I will hopefully be putting the podcast up on YouTube in the next few weeks, so people who use that service are going to be able to download the podcast through that app and not need a podcast app to download. But it's on my to-do list. It will be done. I'm not making any commitments as to when. Until next time, Burma Still Jerkos.
See you, mate. Go Jets.
Thanks.